Question is the obvious one. Caddo Correctional was built to house 1,070 inmates, but today there are close to 1,475 roughly.
Correct. Yep.
So how do you fit that many inmates into a facility with beds only for 1070?
The cells were designed to be double occupancy, but we have 3 to a cell now. And there are 2 built-in beds, and we have what the inmates refer to, or we refer to as a boat. It's an inflatable bed shaped kind of like a canoe, and we have to do 3 to a cell.
How big are the cells, and does that allow for any moving around at all, or how does it kind of paint a picture for me?
Well, the
please.
cells are not large to start with. The design of the jail was that the inmates would spend a minimal amount of time in their cell because it's an open format where the deputy is in the housing unit with them. So the idea was, the way it was designed, was to have a lot of freedom of movement within the housing unit and to the outside. But with 3 people in there, obviously you're cutting everyone's space down by 33%, which there's not a lot of floor space to start with.
So does crowding impact inmate stress and behavior?
Stress management of your population and your staff are the most important things to have a controllable facility. So, you know, we don't put a lot of thought into having a safe jail until someone you know or someone you love goes to jail. Then you want to make sure our jail is safe. That is dependent on the stress level. So when you are introducing that many more people into a confined space, the stress level goes up. It's harder to manage the inmates. It is more difficult for the staff to manage them. There's less recreation time. The resources for law library, for laundry, for commissary, all that is reduced. Your telephone time, your visitation times, everything is reduced if you're introducing that many people into a system that's not designed to handle that many folks.
And what about those who are in charge of watching and maintaining order, for whom their job is to make sure everything goes okay every day?
It's their stress level, staff stress level is up as well. And it creates a more unsafe environment. And it's just harder to manage an overcrowded jail. The demands for laundry, for everything, is up.
So let's go back to Katrina. That is when you all were told that, because prior to Katrina, you had only 1070. Didn't you have a cap of that many?
We did not.
Oh, what was your cap prior to Katrina?
Our cap was, I want to say it was somewhere around 1,200, but we're talking about what the building's designed for versus what the health department and the state fire marshal say the capacity of the building, what can it accommodate. That goes for shower facilities, for restroom facilities, for the capacity to cook sufficiently for that many people. So there's been a cap on it, on the capacity of the jail from a structural standpoint, health department wise, which is the same as it would be for the fire marshal. So construction material used, the fire suppression that's in the facility, the egress and ingress for movement in case of a fire, those are those numbers. That number was moved to 1,500 in 2005 when the state had to rehouse inmates because of the flooding and the storm of Katrina in South Louisiana.
So it went from 1,200 to 1,500 because of Katrina and the movement of inmates. Was the plan to take it back to 1,200?
Not that I'm aware it was ever designed to come back, because those numbers are based on how many people can you safely, from a health standpoint and a fire standpoint, what's the capacity of that facility. So that capacity is going to be the same no matter what, how the actual number. It's not going to make any difference if the fire marshal says you can safely have 1,500 people here. So for that number to go back to where it was would be an admission, or it wasn't safe at 15 if we got to move the number back. So 15 is the cap for the fire marshal and for the Department of Health. Now that doesn't mean that we are equipped to handle 1,500 on a day-to-day, after day basis. This was an emergency situation, and now we're just in an emergency situation every day.
If someone asked you, told you you could move the number, what would you say is the reasonable number to have?
1070. That's what it was designed for. So a large portion of managing your jail population is the ability to separate inmates from each other, whether they be protective custody because of the type crime they committed, the enemies they have. We have a lot of keep separates within the facility. We can't transport them together. We can't have them out for court together, whether they're co-defendants or a lot of times in this environment, someone's family member was murdered by someone accused of that in another housing unit. You also have male and female relationships that you can't let them mingle at any point. So at 1,070, the design of that facility was that we could separate and keep separate the people that we need to keep separate.
Between, and I'm referencing now the CJI report here, and it says between 2012 and 2022, the median length of time for pretrial inmates, the median length of time doubled. Why?
There's only one reason: we can't get them through the court system.
Is that so would you say the movement of them through the court system is a bigger problem than new numbers, new people constantly coming in?
Just a little background. So we knew, the sheriff's office, we knew 3 years ago that the trend was that we were booking less people, but our population continued to rise. We knew that about this time that we would reach that 1,500 cap. Knowing that, we asked the Criminal Justice Institute to come do a study. That's a section of the Department of Justice from Washington. They came in, they gathered their data, they let us know that pretrial inmates are the problem and that their length of stay has doubled. Well, that wasn't a surprise to us. We knew that. We have identified earlier this year one particular problem that could help manage that number, and it's just not getting done.
What is that problem?
Well, we have pending court cases where the judges will have to continue because they don't have the video evidence of that particular crime. And we have the ability, SPD most especially, has the ability, as well as the Caddo Sheriff's Office, to email a link to that video as opposed to providing it in a form of a DVD, which is very labor intensive. It takes a long time to put all these cameras and all these calls together and list them in a case. So if we were able to use that link, then we could provide the video much quicker, which would reduce the number of continuances, which would help move these people through the system.
So you think the video is a major reason for the decline?
There's a lot of moving parts, but that's a big part of it that we could fix today.
Why not do it?
I'm all for it. Let's do it. It's not the sheriff's office. We're ready to do it. We've been ready to do it.
When I go on your website and I look at Caddo Correctional, you can sort the prisoners a number of ways. And one way is by the length of time they've been there.
Right.
This is a pretrial facility.
Correct.
And you've got some people who've been there for years. How does that happen?
There are circumstances well beyond the sheriff's office. You know, the sheriff can't let someone out of jail. This is all, judges do that, not the sheriff's office. So There are cases where there are mental health issues, there are certifications that have to be done, there's problem with witnesses. Some cases do go on. But like the study suggests or the study shows, typically we have doubled the time that someone spends in jail pre-trial. Our population is going to continue to rise if we continue saying it's going to double in time. We can get this number down to a manageable point, but when we run out of place to ship DOC, Department of Corrections, convicted felons, and we have no more federal prisoners, that it's not really going to solve the problem. The problem is our pretrial detainees. We've got to get them through the court system faster.
Thinking about the individuals who were there, who are waiting twice as long as those people did before 2012, how many of them are frustrated as heck? Many of them, do they realize they're waiting longer than they should be?
I don't really know that. I don't know the answer to that. I'd have to go poll the inmates, but
are you aware of any who would want their stay to be there as long as possible? Okay.
So being pressed for time to reduce the population by the fire marshal who called me, I in turn called Justice Creighton with the state Supreme Court, who has met with the judges to go over their assignments to see if there are possibly cases that they can get into court that they could get a determination. Maybe someone wants to plead guilty, there might be time served, rather than just continuing or leaving it until the next continuation comes up, is to look for those particular cases. I believe we're making a little headway, but that little wiggle room that we have is not going to last long, because really, typically the summer months we book more people per day than we do at any other time of the year. So there's still challenges ahead, but I think we're going to get a little breathing room.
So what happens when you have people arrested for violent crime, very violent crime, and you don't have any room for them?
We just have to take them and put them straight to a cell. We can't turn them loose. And I mean, like you talked about the information that's on our app and our website, I would challenge you to go find 500 inmates that are not a violent crime. There's not. They're violent crimes. The crime rate is rising. We're holding people longer. It's going to back up. It's a problem. This is not going to be solved overnight. The judges will tell you we cannot try our way out of this. We can't do enough jury trials to get us out of this situation. So where is this headed? Well, most recently it headed to the magic number of 1,500. Mm-hmm. And we're going to be able to get by this in the near future, and hopefully we'll have some things in place, but it's coming back. It's coming back.
Well, the CJI report predicts big numbers by 2033.
And I believe those numbers.
But we don't have room for them.
We do not.
One, you hear lots of stories, anecdotal things, and one is that you've got people at Caddo Correctional who know they're guilty of a violent crime and who know that they're going to be convicted, and they're headed to Angola, and they don't mind spending as much of their time as possible in Caddo Correctional, which I understand has air conditioning. Parts of Angola at least do not. They can see family potentially. Is there some dragging their feet because they know what's ahead and they want to spend as much time here as they can get out of the way?
Probably, but that person hasn't been convicted of anything, and they have rights. They have an attorney, and they are afforded those rights in court, and they can maneuver through the court system the way they see fit. There's not really any ground to be gained on that front. That's their right to do that.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about medical. Are you seeing more and more prisoners that are having extensive medical needs, including mental health needs, and the treatments for a lot of these are very expensive? Talk about that burden.
Right. So, short answer, absolutely. So we have, I would say, the majority of our inmate population has some form of mental health disorder. But you take someone who lives that lifestyle who would end up in our facility, typically they don't really take care of their health. It's not priority. So the money that the Caddo taxpayer is spending to medicate, treat, transport, clothe, feed, which is a huge expense these days with inflation, 500 more inmates than our facility is designed for. That used to be, the jail was about a $55,000 a day operation. It's upwards of $65,000 to $70,000 per day operation today. Medical expense is a huge part of that, which is paid by the commission. They don't want to pay it, but they have to, and it's all our tax dollars.
So when you compare today and the 55,000, how long ago was that?
That was about 3-4 years ago.
Really? It's gone up that much in that period of time?
Yep.
So it's a pretty big burden on the taxpayers.
Absolutely. In fact, there's not another governmental operation within Caddo Parish that costs as much as to run as CCC.
When someone who's incarcerated gets sick, let's say they need cancer treatment, often they're in this, the day you need something, you don't necessarily get it. You have to wait. You have to wait weeks to see a doctor. You have to wait weeks sometimes to get that treatment.
Right.
Do they get in line like everybody else, or are they given preferential treatment by law?
Well, we have to get them in line as quickly as we can. We can't control where they're at in the line, but it is our responsibility because of the Constitution. We have to give them, make sure they get the medical care they need. If they can be seen right away, we take them to be seen, but we have to get in line just like the inmate has to get in line.
Yeah, but
Yes.
The inmate does not go
To the front of the line, no.
No, so they don't go to the front of the line.
Nope.
Okay, but whatever treatment is determined that they need, they have to get it.
You and I are paying for that, yes.
Give me an example of a treatment that you all have
Well, there
done
was
lately that has just been exorbitantly expensive.
Yeah, there was an inmate on a particular prescription, and that one prescription per month was in the thousands of dollars, and he had serious charges. So the Caddo taxpayer is paying for that medication.
One thing I learned over the course of my research is that if you're on Medicaid and you get arrested and you get incarcerated, you're not on Medicaid at Caddo Correctional.
Well, the feds will let the locals pick up the tab.
So the feds transfer that tax
Well,
that burden to, yeah.
Yeah, I know that the commission, the Caddo Parish citizens, we're responsible for their treatment.
Okay. By having such a slow system, are we violating people's rights?
I don't know the definition of speedy trial. I don't know how that applies, but at this point I would say no.
Okay. In this CJI report, they write, Justice partners in Caddo Parish acknowledge that having an overcrowded jail is dangerous for both the people who work in the system and for taxpayers who fund the system. What is even more dangerous than the current state of overcrowding is the potential for this population to continue to grow and exhaust parish resources. Do you agree with that?
100%. We have a declining population in Caddo Parish. The people, we don't have a shortage of people trying to get to CCC. that population is climbing, but the people who are footing that bill is going down. I don't think this is sustainable.
One other thing that I don't think a lot of people know is if somebody is convicted of a violent crime and they move on to Angola or where else, they're taken off our books and put on state books. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So by having a lengthier period of time, if we truncated that and we shortened it, it would be a savings because after that person is convicted, they're no longer on our tab.
Absolutely. So when someone's convicted of a felony, they are sentenced to the Department of Corrections with the state of Louisiana. So that fund, that pool, those people who put into that fund is much larger than just what we put into at Caddo Parish. Is what pretrial, all of our pretrial, every one of us who live and work and buy things in Caddo Parish, that's where our money's going in the criminal justice system, is to the housing, the medicating, the transportation, the feeding, the care of those inmates that are pretrial. Pretrial is our problem. Pretrial is the high number. Pretrial is what cost us.
How do you reduce that number? The first thing people think, we all want dangerous people behind bars, and we're willing to pay for that. Most people are. How do you get those, just to be sure that readers and viewers understand, how do you get that number down without putting dangerous people on the street?
The pretrial numbers, again, if you double the length of stay, your pretrial number is going to grow, and that's where we are. The people are spending twice the amount of time in jail as pretrial. It can only grow. Well, the more it grows, the more selective you're going to have to be about who goes to jail. If you're going to bet your money on letting someone out of CCC that they're not going to do something, you're not going to have much of a pool to bet with before long. I would not make that bet. People are not at CCC for simple possession of marijuana. You can go on our app, our website, you can look at their charges. Tell me who you want to turn loose. They're right there. You can read the charges.
One thing this report said is that since 2012, bail has gone up considerably. Are they too high?
It's not really my place to say, but what I think I could say is on a typical weekend is that more serious, more violent charges are being filed. So it's going to result in a higher bond. You have to be, that's up to a judge to set that bond, and I think they have their system of doing it, and that's not something I really want to delve into. But I think overall there are more serious charges of people in CCC, which would in turn reflect a higher bond.
The legislature recently appointed a task force to look at the number of judges we have in each location for the population and determine if certain places need more or fewer. I have heard that when you look at the number we have per capita, that we're really low, that we need more judges. Is that a fair statement? Do you think that the task force is going to find that?
I think whether or not it shows that, I think we need more judges. I think we need more prosecutors. I think we need more indigent defenders because we have got to attack this thing from a prosecutorial standpoint, not just determining what bond should be and who can make a bond. And there's a lot of moving parts to this, but a long-term solution is we have got to get these people through the system and either found not guilty or sentenced to Department of Corrections, and let's ship them. You know, the DA will tell you that, and I'm not disputing what he's saying, but he will tell you that we try more cases than any jurisdiction in the state. And the judges will tell you, and I agree with them, they can only see the inmates that are on their docket. They don't make the docket, and they see them all. Well, we need to do more. There needs to be more. You know, as the sheriff's office, if there's a flood or trees down, we don't say, well, it's a shift change, we'll pick up here tomorrow. No, we all come in from work, we all do extra, we work overtime, and we get the problem fixed. I don't see an issue with letting that happen in more areas of the criminal justice system. Let's ramp it up. It's not business as usual. We're in a crisis. Let's ramp it up and let's try to get through this thing. Let's get some of this stay down. This twice the length of stay. We can't keep doing it.
So the parish's footing the bill. What doesn't it result in a cost savings if they say, all right, we're gonna pay people more, because part of the problem is public defenders and what they make. It's not enough, right? It's not competitive.
I agree. They can't keep staff.
They can't keep staff.
Just like we can't keep staff.
Well, why don't we just pay individuals more so we have more people working, and then we end up with not only a more functional system, but we end up saving money on the back end?
Higher pay doesn't necessarily get you all the staff you need. There's a problem with hiring in my profession all across the nation. It would help if we made more, but I don't think that's the solution. We've got to change the way we look at law enforcement and the way we perceive what they do and the way they're treated publicly. You got to get people to want to come into this business. We don't have the numbers that we used to have, just like the public defender, just like Shreveport Police, just like the state police. You know, at a time there were a lot more applicants than there were positions. We have a lot more positions than we do applicants now.
That's not going to change.
I don't see it changing anytime soon. I hope it changes.
So, last question, or maybe second to last question.
Okay.
Last year I did a series on truancy, and one of the things we saw was a link between truancy as a predictor of violent crime as a juvenile or young adult. Our truancy numbers have skyrocketed. Sheriff Prater at one time said that you all, among you, call it the coming tsunami. Are you worried about that?
Absolutely. The truancy numbers that I got from Clay Walker during some of our criminal justice meetings was just, I had no idea it was that bad. And it's frightening to think what's going to happen when those kids reach 16, 17, 18 years old.
What have I not asked you that I need to know?
Well, I'll just say that as far as truancy, sports camps, intervention with families in need of services, you know, all those things are necessary. They're not necessarily a law enforcement function, but we still have a emphasis on those things going on right now. But it's like mowing your grass when your house is on fire. Okay, our house is on fire, and we need to quit mowing the grass and put out the house, and that is overcrowding at CCC.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.